Good morning, my beautiful babes and babettes. I'm your resident active advocate, and today I would like to begin with you on a series about disability in law. Now, because I live in Ontario, Canada, and because disability is largely considered to be a provincial issue in my country, I will be discussing Ontario based laws around disability. But if you live in other parts of Canada and if you live in America, because I don't know in America whether it's a federal versus state law kind of thing, look into the sorts of laws that are available in your community, in your province, in your state, wherever you live. It doesn't matter what country you live in either. Just look into your country's legal system as regards people with disabilities. I'm going to be addressing, as I say, the Ontario legislation, and that is mostly covered by an act called the AODA, the Access for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. Now, why, in the first place, does there need to be law regarding what to do with and about people with disabilities in your various buildings and institutions and things like that? The reason for that is the reason why there needs to be laws to cover the rights of any minority group. It's to ensure that we are treated fairly. Before the introduction of the AODA in Ontario, there were not necessarily reasonable standards of law to help people with disabilities, and especially in the realms of education and employment. However, the AODA does go further than this and guarantees us 5 basic sections in which our rights must be observed by law. So these are in education, transportation, customer service, information, and access in indoor and outdoor spaces. So some of these are easy to explain, some of them are harder to explain. I'll just do the bare minimum here, and then in later videos, we'll go into greater detail about each of these sections. So access in education means that I am permitted into a normalized classroom. I am allowed to be in the mainstream of education if I want to be, and my needs must be met by my institution. So that's number one. Number two is access in customer service, which means that if I go into a mall or, any business, any institution, they have to be able to accommodate me in A, getting into the building, but B, filling my needs when I am in that building. Let's say I'm a wheelchair user, I have to be able to get into the building itself. And in Ontario now, you will see more of a prevalence of ramps than upstairs in terms of getting into or out of a building. But these have also been retroactively fitted into older buildings because before the introduction of the AODA, ramps were not at all the standard. This also applies to curbs going down at an angle rather than at the 90-degree angle like a stair, and you don't want to drop off of that kind of thing if you're a wheelchair user or a walker user or a white cane user, that kind of thing. So just access to general areas, and this also applies to outdoor access. These are things that are now considered to be vital because we need to be able to get around and to function in indoor and outdoor spaces in the same way as a person without a disability would be able to do. So that's number one and number two. Number three is transportation. Can I access a place across town without having to jump through hoops to do it? So again, this largely applies to people with physical disabilities. So if I'm a wheelchair user, do I have to wheel my chair across town because there's no accessible transportation in my city? Or does the bus have to be made accessible? Or do I have to have, a specially made bus that is accessible to me. And I will talk at length about the service in, at least in my city, and it is in other places, called paratransit. Um, it's interesting. We'll get to it, but later. So that's numbers 1, 2, and 3. Access, education, transportation. Okay. Information. This applies largely to internet access, but not exclusively. Websites are now mandated to be accessible with different forms of screen readers and readable softwares, those sorts of things. Like if I had a software to enlarge my screen, my website would have to be accessible with that software and be able to interact with it so as to facilitate my ease of use. But that's not the only kind of software either. And websites that are not capable of facilitating that, they need to be updated. And a lot of the time, they are still continually in the process of being updated because, unfortunately, a lot that has to do with the AODA is retroactive rather than proactive. It's fitting disability in to a space rather than accounting for disability as you create this space. So that's numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. It was transportation, education, indoor and outdoor information, and oh, customer service. I don't think I covered this one. Yeah, customer service. So can I go into a spot and have them accommodate my needs? Like, let's say labels and things that I can't read because I'm fully blind, shall we say. This would have to be facilitated by customer service. So it's like, where am I in the store? And eventually, yes, you will learn the layout by yourself, of course, if you go often enough. But if I can't read a label on a thing, or if I can't reach a thing because, say, I'm a wheelchair user or a walker user, and I can't stretch up very high, short people like me also have this issue. So it's a matter of being able to accommodate the people who come into your space in order for them to be able to come back and to give you more business. Because the equality under the law actually facilitates more people being able to use more services, which in turn is actually of benefit to capitalism. I am not a capitalist, but living in a society that is, I think it's important that a wider base of people be able to access your facilities and your information and things like that. There are also laws in which workplace discrimination must be avoided. You cannot hire someone who has the same qualifications as me over me just because they don't have a disability. If I have more qualifications than a person without a disability, I would deserve the hire, not them, because that would be an equal opportunity thing, but it would also be a mark of not performing tokenism. Like, okay, we have our one person with a disability now, we can move on and hire all the normies. That's not how that works. If my qualifications can speak for themselves, I deserve that job over the person with the lesser qualifications, though they may be able-bodied. So that's my introductory primer to this subject, and in the coming days, I will be going into greater detail on these different areas, and I hope you enjoy. This isn't going to be fully immersive because I don't know every stipulation of every law, and the law is also evolving even as I speak. So that's going to be an interesting conversation to be had. Why did this law need to be introduced, and why does it continue to evolve? All right, I will see you all tomorrow to begin talking about I think I want to talk about access to education and to employment first. Those are actually in the same sphere because they do functionally the same thing. So I will be talking about that tomorrow. All right, thank you for your attention. Hope you enjoy. Leave your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye! Mwah.